My name is Mafalda Duarte. I'm the head of something called the Climate Investment Funds. These are a set of multilateral climate funds that were established back in 2008 to specifically support developing countries in spearheading climate relevant investments. A little bit about myself. For 20 years I have been working in development, so I consider myself a development practitioner. Worked extensively in Africa, worked in East Asia as well. And at some point in my life, after having seen so many impacts that are climate related, particularly in Africa, I decided to go back to study the climate science of it, study a little bit the economics, and focus my career on climate work. So Roland Schatz, that is leading the initiative, reached out to me and to some other colleagues. We had a meeting a few months back, and it's great because the ambition of this initiative is the same of our own work. And it's interesting enough because we are working on establishing a new program that is actually focused on climate smart cities. So then our interests are even further aligned. So it's great that this initiative is focusing people's attention on achieving the SDGs and forging the partnerships between people that probably before weren't necessarily talking to each other. And through that, precisely enabling this forging of new partnerships, which are really important. This focusing on a topic, in this case, cities, is one of the SDGs, but making sure that you then bring people that care about the SDGs, but that come from enter this SDG world from different points of view and bring them together. So I think that's great. And even for me, being here is my first meeting. This is precisely what's happening, is that I'm getting to know people that were not part of my network and trying to see how, we can think about ways we can collaborate and do new things and things differently in terms of this urban environment. So I do hope that our program, the program that we want to establish on climate smart cities, what we intend to do is to select a number of cities that are very rapidly urbanizing in developing countries, and that we think there is the commitment from the authorities and society at large to test new models of urban growth. So my hope is that once we have, first of all, that we can benefit from the experience here in deciding which cities to focus on, and secondly, bringing these new partners and thinking creatively to a problem that it is a problem that has been going on for a while, is that our cities are growing very fast, and they have been growing in a way that it's congested and costly and not very environmentally friendly, and disconnected in many parts of the world. So with this, and now we also are in a new area with new opportunities in terms of technology and all of that, youth being mobilized. So I think all of those ingredients are great, and I think this is what this initiative is enabling. So of course the SDG that I am focusing mostly is 13, climate action. In fact, all of the work that we do and that we have been doing for 12 years is about this SDG. But of course, we have also now started to match the funding that we are providing in different countries to different sectors with the SDGs. So we actually are contributing to 10 of the 17 SDGs. But our entry point into the SDGs is climate. It's climate and it's poverty. Those are the two key entry points for us into the SDGs. Okay, so the climate investment funds, we are honored to have been given this opportunity and this trust since 2008 to work with multilateral development banks in supporting developing countries, governments and private sector, and at times also civil society and indigenous people groups in making different investment decisions and investment decisions that align with climate objectives. So right now, we have more than $8 billion under management, 6.4 of which are already in programs in countries under implementation. We work in 72 developing countries. And with this, we are mobilizing more than 60 billion of total investments. And, we consider ourselves, because we have been the largest multilateral climate fund for this 10 years, we take that very seriously. It's a responsibility. And in fact, one of the objectives was be a learning laboratory because we were basically giving the incentives and the support to countries and private sector to test things and invest in things that they hadn't done before. And so the mandate was very much as well pioneer all of these, be the first of its kind in these countries, in these markets, help institutions think differently, bring new partners to the table, but very much never lose sight of learning. Keep learning and sharing that learning as widely as you can. So this is, and we feel quite honored to having been and continue to be in that privileged position. One of the programs we have is a renewable energy, it's an energy access program through renewable energy sources in developing countries. So of course there you see immediately, what is our entry point, as well as SDG 7, universal, reliable, affordable energy access to all people. And so, and we do these things in a variety of ways. I mean, in terms of this program, first of all, we basically have to understand, first of all, we have the countries expressing an interest to be part of our program and lay out, how they intend to achieve strategic objectives in that area, because it's important to have the commitment from the authorities. From that beginning, then, we have our implementing partners that go into the countries and assess, okay, is this a country that have ever seen investments in renewable energy? Yes or no? Do they have the policies in place? Do they have the regulations in place? What is preventing private sector from coming in? And so that dialogue needs to happen between governments and private sector and civil society, communities that will benefit from these investments. And then we will have different challenges in different countries. Sometimes we have to work in helping countries come up with the regulations and build the capacity, because if they have never done a renewable energy investment in the country, at times we have seen that there's not even a department in the ministries of energy devoted to renewable energy or to a specific type of investments in renewable energy. So you have to approach it and structure it depending on where the country is. At times, maybe the regulatory framework is in place, there's some capacity in country or more developed capacity, but the private sector has not yet made one investment. And the commercial banks are not prepared to lend money to this private sector entity to invest in these power plants or these decentralized solutions. So we come in and fill that gap in the market. We finance the private sector. We can also finance the local commercial banks to then on-lend to the private sector. And with that, you start building the track record and the confidence and the learning as well, because a lot of what this is learning as well from different institutions about these investments. And then it's when you start to then create markets. So that's, for example, just one way of trying to bring different things together and tailoring it to where the countries are. So we engaged in this very interesting project a couple of years back, and the intent was how do we spark climate action at a much larger scale and speed? So, we are quite, satisfied and pleased with what we did, but what we did is a drop in the ocean. And we know from the science right now very clearly that we don't have a lot of time. So we pose this question, how are we going to really spark, instigate this climate action at a much larger scale? So we had this interesting project. We spoke with people. We made it on purpose to speak with people that are not dedicated to climate action, that might come across it, might be observing it, but their focus are other areas, both from private sector, academia, media, art. So we brought all of those together, and it was very interesting because, and we have this out there, it's publicly available. What are these zones of opportunity that we basically have to support and instigate to come together? So a few that are really important. Finding ways of empowering youth. Finding ways of empowering women. Basically understanding that, we are moving into a world where decentralization is a key feature. So how do we maximize the possibilities of, what we've called organizing without organizations? How do we take advantage of the fact that, a lot of people want to contribute, but they haven't found the platforms, they haven't found the ways. How do we put those platforms and mechanisms so that you can have a lot more participation from a lot more people? How do we support what we are calling as well in that map, watchful eyes, which is, think about mechanisms that one can support in the countries that make your governments and private sector accountable to what the citizens are hoping that they do. And so that's, and we start to see that, you start to see now in some countries the establishment of climate assemblies, which means that, governments establishing mechanisms where they hear from people and can report back to the people, to the representatives of the broader society, what's going on. So I think that is another big area. Of course, technology, of course, algorithmic action. There's a number of solutions, and there will be other solutions, and we have to find a way of making sure that they can be as widely disseminated, in particular to developing countries, so that we are not faced with this technology divide between worlds. And then this whole area of media and storytelling and immersive news. We have to be a lot more focused and deliberate about using these tools, art, media, culture, stories, to mobilize people. So this, this is now, it was a fascinating project. And now we are thinking, how do we really bring all of these things in communities that have been working quite separately, and also this, the SDG 25+5 initiative is about this as well. Bring these different peoples together, think about new ways of doing things. But it is very clear that, nobody can expect the government's going to solve the problems. So that rhetoric that the governments are going to solve the problems, that's not the case. The governments are part of the solution. Private sector are a big part of the solution. And people are the biggest part of the solution because, as I said, they are the voters, they are the consumers, they are the investors. So, for us to realize that we have this, and if we get organized, that's going to make a big, huge difference.